It is Old Favorite Friday here at Barrel of Monks Brewing, and it is overtime, which means that we are doing a longer discussion about the beer that we picked this week, which is the Terrapin Moo-Hoo Chocolate Milk Stout. And for those of you who don't know, for Old Favorite Friday, what we're trying to do is feature incredible and classic beers, give them some love and attention that they rightly deserve. This beer is really, really nice. I picked this beer out this week. A lot of times we take suggestions for the beers of the week, but I was just wandering through my local beer spot, saw this on the shelf, and went, man, I remember when this was the rage. I remember when, you know, getting your hand on this beer was incredible. I had never had a chocolate beer before. It's not like that is now, where everybody does an overly cocoa nib beer. This was kind of a rare thing, a special thing, and I think one of the breweries that really did it really, really well and got a lot of notoriety for it out the gate. Do you have any memories about this beer? I believe this goes back to at least 2010 or so.
Yeah, so this beer, as well as another one I wanted to mention that I used to always try and find from Terrapin, was their Wake and Bake.
Oh that one as well. Sure, that was a big
and
beer.
So, but both of these beers, like, because I would go to either Total Wine or sometimes because my dad was living in Georgia for a little bit, so he was a little closer, but I would pretty much anywhere I could find this one, I could find it, because you'd have to like keep looking on, your, whatever, not even social media at the time, it was just the Total Wine website. And when I would find it, you had maybe at best like a couple days, because people would just come in and like buy all of it.
Oh yeah. And
so like you said, this was when, like, if you had chocolate, or if you did even like a vanilla beer that to a stout, that was like crazy. And having like a chocolate milk stout, everybody wanted something like that because it wasn't all over the place.
And it was so well done, and it still is, by the way. And this is, I will say, this is the first time I've had this beer in quite some time, right? Like so many of these beers that we revisit, we're revisiting it for you because we want you to get into these beers and love them. But it's also very selfishly, like, we haven't had these beers in a while, even though we love them. So anyway, so this beer has all that big milk chocolate aroma. I mean, this smells like a milk chocolate bar, right? But the flavor is really well balanced. Don't get me wrong, there's chocolate here. There's plenty of chocolate here. But it is not smack you in the face, it's all you taste. There is roasted malt here, maybe a hint of like coffee. There's some bitterness, there's not too much sweetness. I feel like contemporaries to this beer very much were like Southern Tier Chocolaty, which probably was sweeter and a little more over the top. Whereas this beer is a little more balanced, in my opinion. What do you think about this beer? When's the last time you had it, by the way?
Oh, it had to be ages ago, because like I said, I used to hunt beers like this down, but obviously once I started homebrewing more and doing that kind of thing, and these were up until, it's probably more than a couple of years ago, it just seems like a couple of years to me, but up until a couple of years ago, it still wasn't super readily available, like I couldn't find it everywhere. And so it's definitely been at least probably 4 or 5 years since I've had this beer. But I was going to say, I agree with what you said, and it's interesting going back to something like this, because now you have a chocolate beer and you're like, I think I just drank Hershey's syrup. Like, I think that's beer, maybe. Right. But that's what I love about this is when I even like took my first sip after not having it for so long, I was like, I actually want to drink more of that. Like, yes, it is a chocolate beer, but it's very much a chocolate beer, not a beer trying to imitate, some kind of syrup or whatever else. And so that's what I love. Like, it's got very much that roastiness, but it has enough body to balance it, and I'm sure the chocolate adds a little bit to that. But it's just such a classic, well-made beer that I actually wish more kind of, if you want to call them pastry stouts, were made more like this than how they are made now.
For sure. It could just be pretty much every Old Favorite Friday when we're talking about a flavor, when we're talking about an adjunct, we're talking about something added to the beer like pumpkin or cocoa nibs or what have you. We always want balance in the beer. And I remember, as you said, when this beer came out, I thought this was the most over-the-top thing in the world. I didn't think you could get any more chocolate flavor. And yet, 12 years later, 15 years later, we've got breweries producing beer, like you said, that tastes like Hershey's syrup. They're doubling, tripling the amount of cocoa nibs, adding way, way more sweetness and lactose to make those flavors pop, adding vanilla on top of it to make it creamier. There's nothing wrong with any of those things. And by the way, we just made a chocolate stout, chocolate porter, very recently, that is more chocolatey than this. And we are usually a little more reserved in our flavors, and yet this classic beer that I thought was so over the top, our cocoa nibs are more dominant. And Is it my style? Not necessarily, but we were going for something very particular when it came to that, and there's nothing wrong with people that are going for that, but this is what I'm gonna really enjoy.
Yeah, and I totally in agreement, because I was going to say, a lot of the times, and I enjoy brewing them, I think it's a lot of fun, but I'll brew beers that I think people are going to want. But when I'm, hanging out with friends or I'm at home or whatever, if you're like, oh, let's have a chocolate beer, I think of something more like this. Like, I love the chocolate porter we did, and even the other side we did recently, but it's not going to be something I'm going to get, not that you even could, but if you could get like a 12 pack, I'm not going to be sitting there knocking back these, syrupy creations. But this is really balanced. And the one thing I wanted to mention, because I know we've been saying balance a lot, but the lactose, you wouldn't know, like, and I mean that in a positive way, like, it's not overly sweet. Mm-hmm. You don't take that first sip and you're not like, oh, let me set this down for a sec. They did a great job of incorporating it and adding another element without it being too over the top,
For sure. This is a classic beer for a reason, right? Great brewery in Terrapin, making pioneers in a lot of ways in the craft beer industry. Still making great beers. Wake and Bake is still a fantastic beer. Hopsecutioner is a fantastic beer. You can go through their portfolio and enjoy their beers anytime. But right now, we have Moohoo out. If you're watching this video around the time it comes out, go and find it. It's not going to be there forever. So go pick that beer up. And then when you're doing that, tell us what we should be doing and we should be sharing for Old Favorite Fridays in the future. Tell us your favorite beers, the beers that you really enjoy. And also, please like, subscribe, do all that good stuff. And we'll see you next time on Old Favorite Friday. Cheers.
Cheers.